Have you ever wondered about living or working in Japan? Or maybe you've visited Japan or would like to visit it at some point as a tourist. Today, I'm really excited to have Saskia Rock, who is an expat from Japan and now an expat in the US, and also a HR and business efficiency consultant, and a lot of other things too, Saskia, which I will have you share when you introduce yourself on the Expat Woman show today. My name is Naina Kaputi. If you're new to the show, I'm the founder and CEO of the Expat Woman, which is a global platform for women living across the world to help them find resources, community, and support as they navigate life abroad. And I host the Expat Woman show every week, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. PST with amazing expat women and service providers and businesses. So, welcome, Saskia, to this show, and would love if you could introduce yourself briefly, tell us a little bit about your expat journey to the US and what you do.
Good morning, Nina. Thank you so much for inviting me this morning. I love talking about my work and my experiences all over the world. So, quick introduction. My name is Saskia. I was born in Flanders, which is in Belgium, so back in Europe. And from a young age, I was really interested in Japanese culture. So I decided to study Japanese at university. And then, when I graduated, my expat journey began. So back in 1997 is the first time I went to Japan, and I lived and worked there for a while. And then after that, I had, a very busy life in Belgium, working for companies. And at some point, I felt like, I've always had connection to Japan in my work. But at some point, I felt I want to go back, and I really want to work for a Japanese company again. So in 2013, I actually went back to Japan, and I entered an MBA school in Tokyo. And when I graduated there, I decided to stay and work, and I joined one of the big four consultancy companies in Japan. I was in their HR, and I was planning to stay in Japan for the rest of my life. But then I met this wonderful man. His name is Makoto. So he's Japanese, but his work was in the US. And that is how I ended up in the US. And now I'm living close to San Francisco. And I work in HR still. And I also work as a consultant for Japan Consulting Office. So I help companies and their employees who work with Japan or with the Japanese to work more efficiently, to understand the Japanese business culture, the differences with Western business culture, and bridge those gaps. And it's a wonderful job.
It sounds amazing, and it sounds like you're living a dream because you love living in Japan. Now you're married to
Hmm.
a Japanese, now kind of Japanese expat because you're both expats in the US,
Right.
and teaching people about how to navigate life and work in Japan. Love it.
Hmm.
And uh, when I met Saskia, I think I met Saskia maybe a few years ago at an event, but then in the last few months, her post caught my eye because I was planning a trip to Japan with my family, and maybe I wouldn't have really paid attention, and maybe because I was looking on LinkedIn for to connect with people in Japan, your post started showing up in my feed. That's how the algorithm works because I
Hmm.
have at that point I had about 14,500 connections in my
Wow.
network, which is a lot. So I won't see everyone's post, but Sunny Saskia's post was showing up my feed, and every week you share a tip or a custom or a peek into the
Hmm.
culture in Japan, and I was fascinated, and that's we reconnected and we got the conversation going. And then when I came back from Japan, which I visited last month, I met up with Saskia for coffee, and I also brought some chocolate. In fact, I just threw the box away, or maybe some it's sake, Kit Kat chocolates, and we didn't care too much for the flavor, but we kind of bonded over that. And
Hmm.
Saskia has also now joined the Expat Woman membership as a member, so I'm going to get to see her more and spend more time with her through our virtual and in-person events. So I wanted to ask you about I fell in love with Japan. I just thought
Hmm.
it was so magical, and I even though I was there for a few days, I still feel so nostalgic because I belong to a couple of Facebook groups where they keep posting photographs and experiences of their trips to Japan, and it just makes I just
Hmm.
want to get on a plane and fly back to the country. So, but I'd love to hear from you. You went to Japan first as a student, then you went back as a professional.
Hmm.
What did you love about the country? What were some of the things that just stood out? And you could compare it with Belgium because at that time, Belgium
Right.
would have been your,
Hmm.
from your perspective as a Belgian.
Yeah. So, um, it's so totally different, right? I mean, one of the reasons why I decided to study Japanese is, when I was growing up in, elementary school and middle school in the 70s and 80s, we had this big boom of everything Japanese, right? We had the Karate Kid, and we had all the anime, the manga that were suddenly coming. And so when I first went to Japan, that's kind of what I was expecting, like this very, very magical place. And it is, in a way, it is very magical, especially if, as a woman, right? I felt so safe. Even when I was living in the center of Tokyo, it was no problem at all to go out after dark, walk around, even in, Kabukicho, which is like the district where people go out and where some people say, oh, you should be careful. But I never felt unsafe. So for me, that was a big thing, feeling safe. And then also so clean, no garbage on the streets. People don't rush, or I mean, they do rush, but they rush in a very polite way. Right? They don't push, they don't skip the line. So the politeness, the cleanliness, the safety, I think those were the things that really impressed me when I first came to Japan.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, I agree about the rushing. Everything's done very politely. And that struck me about it. And then I remember when I came back, I asked you certain questions like, why do you not throw your garbage in the bin? I mean, why there are no garbage bins? Because that's something I actually thankfully read up about before leaving
Mm-hmm.
for Japan. And they said, carry your garbage with you home, don't eat while walking, quiet voices on the train, do not eat on the train, things that here in the US we kind of take for granted. Like I know
Hmm.
even though on BART they say no eating, there are many times when I've eaten on the train and no one cares. But so, and you said it's all about respect for the people, for other people. So maybe I'll ask you those questions because I thought those were really interesting. Because I asked, so the questions I'd asked you, maybe you can share is, one is,
Hmm.
why are there no garbage bins on the streets in Japan? And despite that, it is so clean. You never see garbage lying anywhere. Why can't couples hold hands? And then the third one is, there was one more. Yeah, just being quiet and not walking
Hmm.
and eating. If you, because I know the
Sure.
responses, but I'd love for you to share them with folks watching this.
Sure. I mean, the first one is garbage, right? It's a little bit like what we're taught here in California when you go hiking, pack it in, pack it out. So you do not leave anything behind because your garbage is yours. So, you don't throw things on the floor, definitely not. And another reason why, I mean, the streets are so clean is that Japanese kids from a small age are taught to clean up their classroom, their school. Like there are no janitors in the schools, right? So together with your classmates every day, you clean up your class. So you learn not to throw things on the floor because you'll be the one picking them up, right? So that's one of the reasons why streets are so clean. People take home their garbage, it's yours. And you take it home and you throw it away at home. And the other question you asked about, like, not holding hands or being quiet, I recently wrote an article about this on LinkedIn, about something called omoiyari. And it basically means thinking with empathy uh, towards other people. So why would you not hold hands with your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend in public? Is because maybe the person you're crossing in the street just recently lost their loved one, or they're yearning for someone and they're unable to find someone. So omoyari is through your actions preventing other people to get hurt. Same thing with eating, or in the street while walking. The person you're passing might be hungry, or talking in the train is, other people definitely do not want to hear what you're saying. Right? People are tired when they come back from work in the morning. They want to concentrate, they want to read, so they don't want to hear what you're saying. So that's the basis of those behaviors. Do not inconvenience or do not hurt other people with your actions.
Thanks for sharing that. So just to play devil's advocate here, because in most
Hmm.
countries there is, we're taught, the civic sense. I grew up in India, and I remember there was all we had, like, about treating the outside as, as well as you treat your house, keeping it clean. Uh,
Okay.
you know, so I'm just curious, but yet unfortunately, India still has a lot of garbage on the streets. I don't want to knock India, but it just, I'm in fact thinking it'd be great if we could get the Japanese government involved with helping India, because in the houses, people keep their houses very clean in India. Just like in Japan, you usually don't wear your outside shoes inside the house.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's certain, similarities, I think, with a lot of
Hmm.
Asian cultures. So, but in India, people will sweep and then might dump their garbage outside. I see the maids doing it sometimes. So,
I see.
how is it different? Because yeah, it's the same. Like even in the US, I'm assuming, I don't know if my kids learn this or not, but like you teach your kids don't throw garbage outside, but you still, unfortunately, especially San Francisco now, it's getting
Mm.
quite bad. So,
Mm.
how is it? What is it that I know you use those terms, but and that kids are taught? But I think in many countries, kids are taught keep be clean, be respectful of the environment, respectful of other people. And we know as adults too that talking loudly can irritate people. I mean, on the train, people having loud conversations on the phone, and it is disturbing. So, but what is it about Japan, or what, did the government implement something that there's such a respect for other people and empathy, as you say?
Hmm. So I think that really has to do with a difference in how you're brought up and also how the society works. Japan is a group based society, right? Everything is about the group. And in the West, and sorry, I don't know much about India, so I don't know about that, but in the West we're much more individualistic. So you as a person come first, while in Japan it's the group that comes first. And also what that does in Japan is you're always watched by other members of the group. So if you do something wrong, somebody will point it out to you. So you have to, I mean, when I think back, like the stories that I hear from my mom and my grandmother in the 30s, 40s, 50s, like your neighbors, if you didn't go to Sunday mass, right, they would say, why didn't you go? You know, this has completely disappeared in the West, right? People are individualistic. Nobody else tells you what to do, or you would not accept other people to tell you what to do. But in Japan, it's still much more accepted. And that's also one of the reasons why little kids, for example, they walk to school by themselves. Right. I don't, you probably saw that while you were in Japan. So it's safe because everybody is looking out for everyone. So as long as people are looking, people will follow the rules and people will be very, very aware of, I should do what is expected of me.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I did find, as a woman too, I did find it very safe. I did go with my husband and kids, but there were times when I would just wander around and,
Hmm.
just, yeah, I saw that respect for each other, and even into stores. And I kept forgetting to use both my hands. Like they're so respectful, and they give you the credit card or, cash back.
Hmm.
And it was, yeah, my kids, I have three kids, but my 12 and 14-year-old would go out at night to the 7-Eleven before 11 p.m. when it shuts. It was just a block away,
Hmm.
but they weren't scared and I wasn't scared because it just felt like so safe. And I'd read before that about how safe Japan was. Now it makes sense because it's, people are looking out for each other, and
Yeah.
the respect again for each other. If anyone is joining us, I'm trying to see the people who joined us live, because it's streaming on so many platforms. Feel free to introduce yourself in the comments, or if you're watching this later, you can introduce yourself in the comment and ask Saskia any questions you have. And if you're watching it live, let us know where you're calling in from. We'd love to know. But let's move on with the questions. So let's talk about now some of the challenges that you might have faced and other expats face when they moved to Japan,
Mm-hmm.
short term, long term, or even tourists, because I'm looking at it from a tourist perspective.
Right.
So yeah, would love for you to share. And hi, Isabella. She just joined us, another member of the Expat Woman, and she's in
Wonderful.
Poland right now.
Okay. Um, the great thing is things have so improved so much in the last 30 years, right? The first time I went to Japan, everything was in Japanese. People did not speak English very well. So, but if you go today, and you probably noticed this, Nina, subway, train stations, all the names are in English. People will, and they used to do the same thing. People will go out of their way to help you, but these days they actually speak some English, right? Back in the day that was not the case, and you would have to like use hand gestures and things to make yourself understood. But some of the challenges maybe, I think not so much as a tourist. As a tourist, there's this other word or this other concept in Japan called omotenashi, which is used for guests. So, as a tourist, as a guest in the country, people will, people especially who work in tourism, so in the hotels, the taxis, and everything, they will go out of their way to help you. And that is one other reason why Japan is so popular with tourists, because you feel really welcomed, and people will help you out with whatever you need. Now, if you go there as an expat, everything goes really well until you need to deviate from the norm. So the Japanese are very organized, risk averse. They have procedures for everything.
Mhm.
But as a foreigner, right, as an expat coming in, of course you deviate from the norm because you're not Japanese. So if you come across one of those little issues, it might take quite a while and quite a lot of work to solve whatever issue you're dealing with. So I'm going to give an example from the first time I was in Japan. This is probably no longer the case, but back then, if you wanted to open a bank account, you needed a phone number. And to get a phone number, you needed a bank account. So those kind of things. So I actually had to take my supervisor from work, had to go with me to the bank to explain, yes, I vouch for this person. So there are still some of these things. Of course, in my case, like if you speak Japanese, it is easier to get through the red tape. And also because there are so many more foreigners living in Japan these days, it's easier. But you will still run into these funny little things, that might trip you up. But again, people are really trying to help you, willing to help you. So usually, you can fix anything that needs fixing.
Wonderful. Isabella just shared that she says, "Greetings from Poland. My daughter dreams about living in Japan." Very cool. So, Isabella, you and Saskia can connect after this event. Saskia is also just a new member of the Expat Woman membership. So, you all can even connect inside the membership and chat. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and I agree that I didn't have much of an issue with maybe it could be, as you said, a tourist felt very welcome. Even
Hmm.
when I one time, as I mentioned to you earlier, I was walking down the street and eating my ice cream very close to the Sensoji temple in the market area because it was so hot and there was nowhere to stand.
Hmm.
I received a lot of flack in the Japanese travel Facebook group because they were like, "That is so rude," but it was, of course. There was nowhere to stand, and ice cream would have melted if I got back to my Airbnb. And I didn't see anyone giving me dirty looks, but maybe because it was so touristy, right? Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, but yes, I did notice that everything was in English. And then there's always, of course, now things are so much easier with Google Translate.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, I did want to mention about ask you one more question before we go into the, like, navigating the community, the
Hmm.
workplace. I noticed people wear mostly muted colors.
Hmm.
They like grays, whites, creams, and they're also pretty modestly dressed, very stylish, but you rarely see like people exposing their legs or the
Yep.
cleavage. This shirt that I'm wearing, actually, I bought in Japan at a mall, and then
Hmm.
I'm wearing these really cute little crane origami earrings. So yeah, it was fun shopping in Japan. Also because the dollar when I went was pretty strong, and even the Indian rupee was stronger than the yen. So I went at the best time because I could, shopping, everything was so reasonable and it was just a
Hmm.
fun experience. And one more thing I wanted to add was what I liked was when you go into the changing room, one is you take off your shoes, and second, they give you this little like covering for your face so your lipstick doesn't get
Yep.
onto the clothes.
Hmm.
And here plenty of times in the malls you see like shirts hanging, on with lipstick stains on them. So I thought that was, really cool. And then the third
Hmm.
thing I wanted to share one more thing, but technology, like at Uniqlo, which I had to go to because there's one they are originally from Japan. At they had self checkout, and you just put your basket with
Hmm.
all the clothes in it on the like a little stand,
Hmm.
and it you don't even have to like tag each
Hmm.
item. It just figures out what clothes you have in there and how much you have to pay. And I was like, wow, this is like the malls in Japan, especially for women's clothes, maybe men's clothes too. Oh, and one more thing, I know also in the changing room, you can show them what you are going to buy, and they show you what it looks like on different body structures. So, yeah, sorry, my phone. You can't hear my phone, but my phone just went off. So yeah, so I wanted to talk about the muted colors because
Hmm.
when you look at the kimonos, those are really colorful. You have all the cherry blossoms. The temples are pretty. They remind you of Indian temples in the sense of lots of
Hmm.
reds and gold. So why is it that people are wearing muted colors? And as for women, we notice the fashion, and that's like very curious
For sure.
about that. What's the story behind that, or the understanding?
I think, I mean, from a woman's perspective, definitely, you would not display too much flesh, right? So no cleavage, no short skirts, especially if you're in business as well. People do not want to stick out, and so that's something that is also very much normal for me, because back in Flanders, like when you, as a woman, when you dress, it's kind of muted as well. So for me, that didn't stick out so much. Um, so women, going back to your ice cream story, in my opinion, showing deep cleavage or having really short shorts and walking around the temple is much worse than having bought an ice cream at the ice cream stand there, and taking a few steps with it. So that's one thing that I really also try to, I mean, not try, I practice when I work with Japanese companies, especially when I work with Japanese management, is my colors are muted. I don't have cleavage. I am very dressed very respectfully. So that's that thing. Sorry, what else were you
No,
asking?
I was wondering. Yeah, no, you are. Yeah, I was wondering why. Yeah, I'm assuming that again, maybe it's similar to some Middle Eastern countries where just like it's out of respect for other people, so you don't. Because I know in some countries you don't expose too much because it might get
Right.
men. I hate to use and you know what I
Right.
mean,
I
right?
know what you mean. I know what you
Yeah.
mean.
So
Yes,
and
yes,
then, but
yes.
is it the same thing with the muted colors? You don't wear.
I mean, well, I mean, women didn't used to work, right? At least as soon as they got married, they had children, they would stay home. There are many reasons for that. We don't have the time to go into that today. Maybe on another podcast we can do that. Um, but so it's just not deemed professional. Um, and as a woman myself, I again, it's different, right? In every culture that you're at, I grew up with being covered. Of course, not the neck to there, but just being professional and um, not putting yourself out there in that way, just
Mhm.
making sure that people see you for the person that you are, for your accomplishments, and not because you have big
Mhm.
boobs or long legs or whatever. So I
Yeah.
think that has to do with it. And the other thing, as I said, like the group, right? People don't like to stick out,
Mhm.
because when you stick out, you invite criticism from others.
Right.
And knowing that Japan was closed off for a very long time, right? Only in the 1850s is when they opened up to the world. So Japan, in some ways, is still a lot more traditional than we are, used to here in the West. So if your mother and your grandmother are watching you, you're not going to go out with, all your wares on display, right? So that's basically it, not sticking out. You'll also see when, especially when people join the workplace, especially in the beginning, they will all wear the same. They all have dark
I
suits,
noticed that.
right?
Yes.
They all wear the same. So when they get older, yes, if professional women, they vary more colors. But when I was working in consulting in Tokyo, I would wear red sometimes, and that was very, very unusual. But
Mhm.
I could get away with it because I'm not Japanese, right?
I got
So,
that. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I
uh-huh.
did notice a lot of especially the men wore black pants and white shirts with maybe
Hmm.
a tie, but everyone was dressed very spiffy. And if they were not professional, just loved looking at the outfit. So, in terms of the workplace culture, like
Hmm.
what are some tips? Maybe there are folks here watching this or who want to move to Japan or currently in Japan. Like, what are some things to keep in mind so especially since it's like a more like a group culture so you don't stand out, you're respectful of the culture, you can do well in the workplace. Would love for you to share some tips.
Right. I mean, yeah, especially for the workplace, I would say be humble. Again, the difference between individualism and group culture, right? Here in the West, we're like, oh, I have to shine. I have to make sure that people understand that I'm a unique individual and what my strengths are, right? In Japan, people are much more humble because it's the group that works together, and it's the teamwork that makes everything happen, right? So coming in with, oh, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to tell you how this is done, that will not work in a Japanese work environment. So you have to be very humble. Try and find out what your working environment is, who you can go to. So yeah, I mean, it's all about cooperation. And but I think for any person who's worked outside their own culture, is that's how you have to be in the beginning, right?
Mhm.
Trying to figure out like the lay of the land, how you should behave. So don't come in with like guns blazing and all your extrovert mannerisms or whatever on display, because that is not well respected in Japan. That is something that you should try to avoid.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think especially for Americans, right? Because here I had to unlearn the Asian culture because in India too, it's very like group. Now it's changing, but if you stand out, sometimes people think you're showing off. But here
Right.
it's all about you have
Mhm.
to talk about yourself, which is fine. I
Yeah.
think each country has their own culture, but it's so important to really learn about the culture both in the community and
Hmm.
professionally. If you want to fit in and you want to be respectful and you want to succeed in that country, right? And then
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you, are there any cultural taboos or behaviors? We did talk about, eating and dressing. Is there
Right.
anything else that you want to add, or any differences between Japanese and Western workplace cultures in the community? Anything helpful to people watching this, again, who are planning to visit, travel, or live there or work there?
I think what is I mean, there are so many differences, right? It's kind of hard to focus on one or the other. I think that the tip I want to give is start with kindness, because Also from the Japanese side, I that's what I experienced most, kindness. Like even having studied, Japanese culture, Japanese workplace culture for 30 or more than 30 years now, I still make mistakes sometimes. Because you cannot know everything. It's impossible. Like the Japanese interactions, they're so situation based, right? So you go to a new situation and suddenly you have to like act a completely different way. We are unable to know all of those. The Japanese know that. So if you make a mistake, they will probably point that out with kindness, right? And if you say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm learning, then there's absolutely no problem. So I know a lot of people, especially in the workplace, are kind of scared of interacting with the Japanese, but don't worry about that. Kindness is the basis, and trying to understand where people are coming from. So as long as you have good intentions, you will do well. Don't worry about that.
That's a great tip. I think starting with kindness, very, very helpful. We are all at time, but I
At
have
time.
actually one more question because
Sure.
yesterday this TikTok or Facebook reel showed up on my page, and it was this woman who was talking about mental health. She's an expat in Japan,
Yeah.
and she was like, because she's American, like mental health is taboo, or it's so just very quickly, because a lot of expats when they move to another country, your mental health is often affected.
Hmm.
We don't focus on mental wellness. So anything you want to share about that, and or why mental health is taboo, anything around the topic, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, here in the US, I think the last 10, 15 years, there have been huge strides forward, right? Because there's almost such an epidemic of mental problems. People have become much more open to talking about it. In Japan, it's still very taboo. But organizations like Tell, because TELL, I think that's the person that you were referring to. They're trying to make it more acceptable to talk about. And I think because there are more and more foreigners living in Japan as well, we are more open, right? And as you say, as an expat, it's sometimes very, very hard, especially if you're alone, right? If you're alone in a new country, you don't know anyone, you left all your loved ones behind, things are new, things are difficult, different. So there's a lot of, trouble that you could encounter, that or things that might make you feel sad or unhappy, right? So these organizations like Tell in Japan, they're so helpful in making in making it more normal to talk about mental issues, and also helping the Japanese to understand that it's okay to talk about mental issues too. But it's still very taboo. And again, I think you have to think back to America 30, 40, 50 years ago. Same in Europe, you did not talk about your mental health, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure things will change, especially with the next generation.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know about Tell. It was a video, but now I know. So I'm glad there's an
Yeah.
organization doing that. Okay, I'm going to do a rapid fire because what is your favorite Japanese food? What is your favorite place in Japan? And then what is your favorite Japanese book that you've read that people could, to learn more about? If you don't know, yeah, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I was thinking there's so much I want to learn from you, and I know everyone's
Right.
talking about Japan. Yeah. So those favorite food, favorite place to visit, and a book or a podcast or anything Japanese related for people to just enjoy the magic of Japan.
Okay. Favorite food. It's really hard. Anything my husband cooks, basically. So my husband is Japanese, but so he loves to cook Japanese food. Um, he's really into ramen, so I get a lot of ramen at home, but I love sashimi as well. I love everything. I also love natto, which is kind of it's a sticky literally a sticky subject with a lot of non-Japanese, because they can't eat it. It's like very sticky, it's weird. My husband actually doesn't like it that much, but I do love it. So my favorite place in Japan, Well, Kamakura is one because my husband was born in Kamakura, so I lived there for a number of years. It's beautiful. I also love another place called Atami, which literally means hot ocean. So it's a city that has natural hot springs, which is right next to the ocean. It's a wonderful place to go and to relax and enjoy. My favorite book, oh my gosh. I just love reading so much. I would say probably, I mean, an author like Haruki Murakami is an author I really love, and he has many books. They're all translated into English. So I would say, if especially if you like what we call like magic realism, um, there's some magic in his books, and it's different. It's different from a lot of other Japanese writers, but he's very well known. So definitely, I would check out his books. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy the Japanese food, but I fell in love with the onigiri.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was because you lived right next to 7-Eleven, so it was
Yes.
just like, yeah, delicious. And someone asked, how's your Japanese, Jarell Mason? You study Japanese, so I'm sure, and you're married to a Japanese person, so I'm sure your Japanese is really good, right?
Well, I mean, it's an ongoing thing. It's lifelong learning, right? So I spent time in Japan. I spent time outside of Japan. Every time I go outside of Japan, my level of Japanese drops. Now, since I married my husband, yes, 8 years ago, I speak Japanese at home. So at least now, when I'm outside of Japan, I get to continue my current level or even improve. And now that I work for a Japan consulting office as well, I have started teaching sessions in Japanese to Japanese expats here in the United States. So of course, my Japanese like business level is improving again. So you have to keep on learning, especially the writing. They have like kanji, right? The pictograms. So I actually study every day because if I don't, I forget.
Wow, that's beautiful. You're inspiring me to kind of want to learn Japanese.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. This was so informative. For me, it was very exciting because I'm reliving my trip last month, just listening to everything you shared about Japan.
Hmm.
And I just want to thank everyone who's joined us live or watching this later. As I said before, it's streamed on our three platforms. So if you have any questions, you can, for Saskia, you can post them in the comments. Saskia, I also wanted to ask you how people can connect with you. If you have anything that you want to share, go ahead.
You can find me on LinkedIn. So Saskia Rock, or I also have my own website. It's just saskiarock.com. So very easy to find me there. I post, as Nina said, I post 2 or 3 times a week little snippets about Japan, about culture, about working in Japan. So if that's your interest, just come and check it out. And also always happy to hear from you. So send me messages, connect, and happy to talk about my experiences anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you making this time. And I will see everyone next week with another episode of the Expat Woman Show. Have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. Bye.